most audiences don't remember motivation, backstory, the interwoven fabrics of. They remember like 3 or 4 big moments from the movie, and I think this one delivers on that perfectly fine. Right? This isn't going to be like a mind-blowing gem, but I think it's a really fun, gooey ride. Greetings, friends! Welcome back to the Messed Up Movies Podcast, a podcast celebrating movies and filmmakers that embrace the unhinged, the insane, the outrageous, the off-kilter, and the all-around kind of messed up fun you can't take your eyes off of. Welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Griffey, here for this new movie Monday. A little bit of business before we get started. We have a guest host today. My longtime writing partner, fellow member of the Misfit Parade. Welcome to the show, Jonathan Holliday.
Hi. What's up?
What's up? Yeah, he's here. He is fucking pumped because I always bring the greatest movies for him. It's kind of Christmas all year long for John. He gets to hear my wisdom. We get to write together. I always make him watch the best movies. So the gift that keeps on giving is our friendship, I would say.
Yeah, indeed. And I think for anybody watching this and expecting to be met with the level of enthusiasm that Griffey displays should know that I am the reverse side of the coin to Griffey. So
this is why it works, dude. We are a classic fire and ice. Yeah, you don't have a D&D party that's all fireball casting wizards. That's not a good look. You got to mix it up.
We've discussed our D&D party affiliations and how.
Yeah, I'm a barbarian. Truly, that's just how it goes, man. It's fine.
I mean, you would be. Yeah.
All right, before we dive in to Street Trash, the new film from Ryan Kruger, a Ryan Kruger thing, right? The newest offering, Street Trash, he of Fried Berry fame. You might remember we interviewed him on The Film Alchemist a while back, so you can go find that. Super cool guy, love him. Excited to talk about his new movie. A little business, please go to the Messed Up Movies Podcast Patreon page. It's the absolute best way to support the show. It's the absolute best way to get more of what you want, to have some voice in the kind of stuff we talk about. A lot of cool stuff coming up with Misfit Parade as well that will be kind of housed there. So if you have the kindness in your heart, one more Christmas gift for your old pals here at the Misfit Parade and the Messed Up Movies Pod, go to that Patreon. That would mean the world to us. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Misfit Parade. Video versions of all this stuff. We've got some shorts and other content we're doing over there. We would appreciate a follow over there on all of the social media platforms, doing the reels, the shorts, the TikToks, all the things the algorithm demands. That would be great. Go to misfitparade.net. Subscribe to the newsletter over there because we are about to start production on the next segment of our first feature film, Mr. Cream Jeans Hidey Hole, that John and I wrote. It is it's a wild one, so you're going to want to be following up on what we're doing there. 5-star ratings and reviews wherever you find pods, and let a friend know, man. Send them a short, send them an episode. We appreciate it. All right, that's enough business.
Fake dicks are expensive.
Fake dicks are expensive, as we are learning constantly, especially when they're as large as the fake dicks we're working with. All right, John.
Yeah.
So Street Trash is a remake of a 1987, kind of a cult classic, man. A lot of people I know love Street Trash. Joe Bob covered it, right? And we kind of all were like, oh, yeah, I remember this movie. This was like a video store classic. Great cover, right? This one, directed by Ryan Kruger. He was one of the writers.
You keep wanting to say Kugler.
I do. I'm messing it up. I'm also notoriously horrible with names, so that's on me. Let's see. We've got in the cast Sean Cameron Michael, Donna Cormack-Thomson, Joe Vaz, and Gary Green, who you might remember as the main guy from Fried Berry. So Ryan Kruger is a director from South Africa. Fried Berry hit like an atomic bomb on the indie scene. It was one of those movies everyone was talking about. You had to see it. It's a very unique and interesting experience, right? So we were all kind of wondering what comes next for Ryan Kruger, right? Again, a hustler, a really fun guy. Me and him talked a lot about like those video store nights and finding the wildest covers and watching these wild things with our dads. Really, really like rooting for this guy. I really love him a lot. I want to start here, John.
Sure.
In a world of IP, in a world of franchises, this to me feels like the move for an up-and-coming director, right? The first thing we always talk about when someone makes a good horror movie, right, an indie horror movie, is that we got to put them in Nightmare on Elm Street. We got to put them in Friday the 13th, something like that. We got to get them in the big franchises, right? I love the idea of taking these kind of forgotten gems of the past that we all liked and we all remember and giving that some new life. I like the pay it forward aspect of it. I like the idea of those old movies getting some run again. What do you think of this in the world of IP, of going back to these undiscovered resources rather than just, going back to Camp Crystal Lake?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point. First of all, I think this isn't a remake. I think it's supposed to be a sequel, right?
I think it's like very loosely a sequel.
Because they reference, I think, getting whatever the substance is from like the New York incident.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's supposed to be like a sequel of some sorts. But to your point, I think it's not like a bad idea to, if you're going to be handcuffed to pre-existing IP, to do something that maybe isn't as well known. Although I think in this case, or in the case of something like that, I feel like the move is to go for something that would really benefit from, a modern take, or from technologies or processes that could lift it, or maybe there were restrictions during the time that it was being shot that didn't allow it to have as much freedom to move. And this one's interesting because I don't know if it necessarily cashes in on those.
You can see the decisions, right? Like they add a layer of kind of political commentary. Again, the movie is telling us so immediately, right? With that opening scene of this homeless guy, he's trying to get money. He's worried he's not going to get paid more than like what's getting injected in him. We have this kind of practical effects bonanza, right? And then at the end, as this guy falls apart and like his guts and blood are spraying everywhere, there's this kind of funny beat where the lab coat just goes, holy fuck, it worked. So this movie's telling us immediately that it cares more about the comedy and the gags than the layer of political stuff it adds, right? I think we'll get later into if that was a great choice or not, because the original, I don't know, have you seen the original Street Trash?
I have not seen the original Street Trash.
So the original, right, the substance was called Tenafly Viper. Essentially, it was like this old extra fermented booze that was like 60, 100 years old, something. And the guys start drinking it. Yeah, and they're like melting then. So there's a layer of just kind of coinky-dink to it. It's not I do think this movie suffers from trying to walk in two worlds a bit, where if you're going to add the political layer, it feels like something that should be done with maybe a little bit more reverence and care than this one does.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. It was kind of just like, fuck it, whatever. This is just something that I think will get people going. And it's like, it was really, I feel like, clumsy with that whole aspect in a way that I was just like, why do we even include it? Like,
well, that's the thing. It's like, it's a thing that's not adding a lot, right? Because that's the thing. We live in a moment right now in time, right? We are doing a lot of, me and you talk about this all the time, as the poster says, right? Melt the rich. This is a constant on the top of everyone's mind thing, especially like over the last month. The idea of the homeless people, right? Like, I feel like they're not given like a lot of humanity. The moments they are, it's like this great fucking breath of fresh air that we really want. But I do, to your point, I think one of the things I like about this is that they stayed true to the kind of practical effects roots, right? They almost went anti-technology in a way, which I personally kind of liked. And I think finding those old IPs that are, like, I was looking some up, right? We've got Terror Vision, Extro. If you've never seen Extro, is absolutely fucking insane kind of alien ripoff. Chopping Mall, Video Dead. There is like no end of these 80s movies that were kind of one-offs. They're fun. We've kind of come back and refound them. We loved them from the video days. There's a lot of those that could have this effect. I think Kruger made a great choice in picking that thing. Also, when you're remaking something like Street Trash, the stakes are so much lower than if you're the guy who's coming to bring Nightmare on Elm Street back. You better fucking crush that and be diligent at every level. Something like this, most of us are just like, oh, Street Trash again. That's pretty cool. Oh, practical effects. That's cool. So I think I like this path if we're looking at kind of like an industry trend. I think this is very forethinking and a smart way to attack these things myself.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that front. I do, having watched this in preparation for this, some of the compilation of like the melting bits from the original in comparison to like this now, and I do question like was it elevated? Was it taken in a way
Sure.
that was unique and interesting and really kind of like took the spirit of it and charged forward. And yeah, it's definitely a unique thing, right? Because it's all these Technicolor melting goo, blasting internal organ stuff. It's really like sort of pastel and cartoony.
Hmm.
Um, and it doesn't necessarily pass like the first thing really elicit much of like a whoa kind of
Yeah.
thing for me. It's more of like a like, oh yeah, you know what this really reminds me of? Like fucking Hook when they're all eating the bowls of ice. And like that's literally
If they had been like,
all I could
fuck
see
you,
the whole
Panda
time.
Man, and
Yeah.
started ripping him open and eating him.
Right. So
Yeah, like, you fucking left us for 40 years. You think that shit's cool? Dude, that's a cool version of Hook, though. I would watch the shit out of that.
well in a movie that's so jam-packed with like these homages to all these other movies from that era, it feels like they totally could have done a Hook scene at the end and literally eat the rich.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely have the RoboCop moment where the guy's like melting and then gets hit by the car. That's straight RoboCop. The Big Trouble Little China with like Chekhov's blue vial, where it's
Yeah,
like, you'll run
exactly.
faster, you'll think smarter. It's like, oh, okay. See, I think I'm a sucker for, and I think that's the benefit of street trash is my expectations were nothing. I literally just, I want to see those gags, right? I think we're getting into an era, and I think we're course correcting, right? I think the mid 2000s, 2010s, right? There was a lot of these horror movies that went really big on like CG ghost and monsters and wounds. There's something about that that just inherently pulls me out every time, right? If there's not something in the room, it feels, especially for horror, right? And we're writing a lot of horror stuff now. So I think about this a lot, even when we're writing, like, how would you achieve, like, we wrote a script where there's this kind of monstrous creation that you're like, Jesus Christ, how the fuck would you even do that? But I think you have to, right? To me, and I think a lot of horror fans, if you don't have that physical element, like this movie looks rough and ready a lot, right? Like it's stylized, it's shot slick, right? But there are moments where the effects, you can see the edges coming loose, as it were. To
Sure.
me, I find that charming, and I'm down with that, right? I will forgive that more than a lot of these like CG things that just okay, well, now I'm just kind of out of it. Right. And so I think when I watched this, I just wanted, and again, I'm not emotionally invested in the first one. It was fun, right? It was like a thing we watched stoned in a garage. This one felt like it had that spirit, which I liked, right? Like, so if we go through, I thought there were a lot of fun gags, right? I think if I had one complaint with this, is that I don't know that we had the variety of gags that I would have liked from the
It
street
was
trash.
really
It was a
repetitive,
lot
the
of the like
same sort of
bullfrog throat
bladder
thing,
bursting, yeah, kind
which
of
is
thing.
cool. And I mean, to be fair, I think I liked this movie a lot more than you, it sounds like. I enjoyed it every time I saw it, but there were moments like that final scene with the mayor. You're like, yeah, dude, that's what I want. I wanted to see it affect people in more variety of ways. Like we
Right.
saw the mayor, we saw a titty explode, which was cool. We saw a head pop off. We saw a lot of neck stuff, but essentially it came down to like oozing neck and eyes. I would have liked to have seen maybe a little more of that mutation effect
Sure.
before the burst.
Yeah, and to your point with like seeing the sort of edges of how it's made, right? And those things where craft becomes a little more like apparent and maybe those, you're willing to kind of suspend that disbelief in spite of, seeing the seam on the costume.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think that I too agree with you. I think that that's something I'm willing to do, and I'm willing to like go out on that length if I feel like there is something that they're working with beyond that, whether it's story or really like capturing me in a different way. Maybe it's just like the sheer edginess of it, or like the
Mm-hmm.
boldness to tackle like a material, and like that stuff kind of surpasses the production limits. Um,
Yeah.
but in this case, I don't know if I necessarily was feeling that very much in
Yeah.
this watch.
I think, again, I think it's a movie that walks between two worlds, right? It has
There's a
these kind
lot of stuff going on in a pretty frenetic pace.
yeah,
And
which, I mean, I think that's kind of when Ryan Kruger is at his best. It is that, like, you feel like you're in the mind of someone who's going insane, like right at the edge of breaking, where you can kind of tell what's happening, but not clearly, right? And I think this one, it has these kind of aesthetics and set pieces of a newer horror movie that wants to add these elements of, you know, instead of just drunk hobos, what if this is the government coming for you? Right? It has these aesthetics of things that make it feel more present today. But at its core, it really wants to be that garage stoner movie that we found in the 80s. Like, we found those movies from the 80s and we weren't like, oh, Chopping Mall doesn't have much to say about capitalism. Ugh. You know what I mean? We wanted to see a robot kill some people. And I don't know, I think what this movie could have done better is you got to pick what you want to be. Like, if you're going to go like full brainless, go full brainless. But if you're going to be like, it's mostly brainless, but for the poster, we want to say it's a social commentary. Because there are decisions that happen with, let's just get to this now. There are moments, I do not love the way the homeless people are unfurled in this movie.
no, it felt borderline kind of like an insulting caricature.
I mean, I wouldn't even say borderline. I don't think it's meant to be insulting. I think, again, it's the problem of trying to take the IP, and I think just by adding the social because essentially the group we meet are all kind of like, there's a scene where we kind of meet all of them, and they're essentially introduced as like party animals, right? It's like when we meet the fucking brothers from the Animal House fraternity, and you're like, this feels weird. Like, are they here because they party too much? Are we saying
superpower?
Yeah, like, do they deserve this? But then it's also like, okay, it's kind of like a Cheech and Chong comedy riff. Okay, cool. But then they have the new female homeless lady enters, right? And then we just start adding like other weird choices, like so either the homeless guys are like party animals who are like fried, right? They're all fried berries in this, or they're like a roving gang of rapists.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Like, that's the thing where you're like, don't
like
just
that.
flippantly add shit like that into me. Because then at the end, when she goes to the guys who are going to rape her multiple times, and they rejoin, and he has like a heroic stand, like, I'll take it from here. And it's, are you sure? Yeah. And they're like, nice, bro. It's like, nope, that guy, what?
It doesn't feel like it kind of feels like it's trying to be edgy for edgy's sake and not landing with anything.
Yeah, well, I think, again, I
like,
think they're falling back on the, like, we are doing a social commentary thing, but
Yeah,
what they
but are you-
really want to do is the Jay and Silent Bob comedy. So all of that societal stuff feels like it's giving it like a really uncomfortable subtext that I don't think the movie wants to grapple with in any way. Because there is this, like, there's the
okay,
idea of
it's
a
like-
rat king who never manifests, right? And like this
Well,
boogie manification of the homeless. And if we're showing the homeless as monsters, but then we realize they all actually have hearts of gold and are here because of an unfair system. Okay, the movie's not trying to do that. It just sprinkles in enough that we, as an audience, have to wrestle with that, which feels like an off-putting choice.
Sure, and we're kind of being led to have this sort of like social commentary viewpoint, though. So
Yes.
it does make it frames everything in this light of like is this like a fair representation of some of these issues? Does this even
Yeah.
like tackle that? Which I wouldn't be doing if it was just like a fucking fun romp, you know?
Right, if
It's
they
like,
actually just found like party drugs and this started happening uncontrollably and we're just doing a splatterfest, that's one thing. And again, I think it's hard because when you're doing street trash, the first movie had this layer of drunken homeless guy as the core of the film, right? And like, oh, look at these homeless people getting it, which, you know, maybe in like a Reagan era kind of movie was different. Now it's like, there's some shit in here that I'm like, I just don't, because there's a scene when the girl, she goes outside, right? When we kind of introduce the crew, we have this like blue imaginary friend that's voiced by Ryan Kruger himself.
yeah, that whole bit.
Suckle. It's, again, I think I like that kind of shit. Just add the weird thing in. Just do the weird thing. It's fun. You know, he has a little cock out a lot, whatever. But she goes outside and she's like, my dad worked all day at the factory to try to feed us, but he couldn't, and he died on his shift. And then the next day I found my mom and she was fucking heartbroken, like dead in her bed. So I had to go get food, and I came back and my 10-year-old daughter or 10-year-old sister was taken to a work camp or whatever. And the actress, I forgot her name again already, Donna Cormack-Thomson, she fucking crushed that scene. She's so fucking good in that scene. And I was like, yeah, dude, that's what I need. Like, put some humanity behind these. It feels like one of those movies where it's like our lead character never really finds any kind of like pathos. And so she does. And you're like, okay, hell yeah, dude. She had, like, we're talking about the real kind of teeth of reality that put these people in this bad spot. And then we're kind of overrun and flooded by cartoonish, not well thought out caricatures of, like, every guy in the homeless group can't be the like funny stoner character.
Yeah.
It feels like where they made the misstep.
I don't feel like any of the characters really like stood out to me as being like.
I did like the riff of the like obese Stanley Kubrick looking guy who was just shitting on all of the Disney movies. I was like, that was fun. With
his weird New York Jewish accent, like.
That was a choice. That was certainly a choice.
Of South Africa. You want I should do this thing? Like, it's just like, what? What the fuck's going on?
I did have to Google. I was like, do we have a lot of that running around in South Africa? Like, are there a lot of like New York Jewish people that immigrate to South Africa? Okay.
And yeah, just people listing like how many names for like a vagina can you get?
See, I like those gags, but again, the movie never decided. Well, again, the movie clearly decided what it wanted to be. It wanted to be the how many words for pussy can we say movie. But then we're doing like batteries and drones, and the mayor's going to kill everyone because he hates homeless.
I think it was a victim of its own, like world building. It kind of got caught up in the artifice of it, that it lost any form of like edge that it could have had. And,
I think that's a fair point.
But let me also just say, so the original came out in the 80s, right?
Yeah.
And at the time,
87.
The stuff that it was doing was probably pretty shocking, was probably pretty crazy. If you are going to be the spiritual sequel and take the namesake into the current year, I feel like you've got to fucking bring something, because nothing in there really shocked me. And it wasn't in a way where it's just like, because admittedly, maybe not my cup of tea when it comes to movies. And
yeah,
the people had fun with this one. I
may have set you up.
That's super awesome. I don't want to yuck anyone's yum, but I will say it's just like, we're sitting here claiming this is like XXX fucking intense porn, and then you get on there and it's just some fucking softcore Cinemax shit where it's just like, what is this? It felt weak. Like, we didn't elevate anything. We didn't raise the stakes. We didn't hit anything that shocked me in the way that I feel like when that film probably came out, it did shock people.
I think it's the balance of like when the comedy takes shotgun, it's hard to find that. Like, even at the end when we're doing our homeless assault, like the security we like break away from it so the security guards can do like a gag bit, right?
Yeah.
Our main cop, the police who starts the movie like chasing this guy through the world they're building, which I thought was pretty cool to like see like the layers of society.
Sure.
How people aren't even really reacting to this cop clearly is like just going to catch and hurt this homeless guy. I was like, okay, I like that. And then he like sprays boner dust on him. And for some reason, the guy can't just keep his erection in his pants. It has to flop out as he's chasing him, and then it gets cut off. And he becomes boner cop. And you're like, okay, that's the movie you want to do. So I was expecting more of a Fisher King's kind of romp of like exploring this unseen like underbelly of society, right? Like going through the homeless society that lives right beneath us, right? And kind of grappling with that. Like, I like the scene where we go to, I still don't know who the fuck the Rat King was supposed to be. Was it the gimp in the diaper who talks really well, we find?
I thought it was
the lady who's like, suck on my toes?
Yeah, suck on my frostbitten toes.
Yeah.
I think it was
that
her.
Scene I loved. That's the kind of scene I want from this movie. I want to be in that bizarre, and again, I think surreal is the thing. When this movie is going surreal, I think it works really well. Like that's the stuff. Because again, unlike you, I really got a lot of joy out of the gags. I liked the kind of like high school sense of humor of it at times. Like that stuff did work for me. But then it's those interludes where it's like we cut back to like a real world, like a real harsh world, where that's where I feel like it is defanged a bit. You know what I mean? That part didn't elevate to me. And so, again, I think if you are a fan of street trash, I think this movie delivers exactly what we were hoping it would be. I think for some people who are new to it, they might be expecting more than this movie was even willing to try to offer, if that makes sense. I think that is the danger of remaking cult classics as well, is that I got exactly what I wanted. I don't know how like a new horror fan finds this, and if it hits them the way the original did.
Sure. Which leads me to a thing, like, are we just serving like this nostalgia, or are we really trying to capture the spirit of something, which is, to that point, it's kind of something that I think about this time of year, because we're recording this the day after Christmas, right? Mm-hmm. And Christmas traditions, I always think of them as there's certain things some people get really strict with, right? Mm-hmm. We have to do this, and this.
Watch this movie, read the night before Christmas, or what? Yeah.
Right. And in my family, it was always this thing called the Big Supper on Christmas Eve, which was this, pseudo-Ukrainian sort of tradition of like a meatless meal with these 12 courses, and it's very strict, right? And as you go on and as generations change, right, mm-hmm. those dishes and the things that are served, people are just like, this is fucking terrible. It is sauerkraut and dried peas and stewed prunes. And
you got some 12-year-old cousin who's like, where's the glizzies?
Yeah, it's something that becomes universally kind of maligned, right? It's because it changes. Generations change. Mm-hmm. And you have to ask yourself, do you want to continue a tradition because it serves this idea of how it was done before and the way things are expected to be and a sense of nostalgia? Or do you want to find what the real like spirit of it is, getting together on New Year's Eve to unite all the branches of the family and come together, and this idea of being able to do that when, in the past, maybe we couldn't have done that because of war or whatever. With this, I asked the same sort of thing. Like, are we remaking something so similar to the original with like the same style of effects and just to serve an audience that is familiar with that work and will respond with like a hell yeah, brother, that give me more of what I want. Give me more of that thing that was so awesome back when I was younger. Or are we capturing the real spirit of it, which was something that was edgy, something that was shocking, something that was meant to be like, fuck you, punk rock, let's go for it. And I feel like if we're not doing that, then I think we're serving something that just feels like not true and not honest and not.
Yeah. Well, I think you're approaching this from a headier place than most people who are watching street trash. Well, I will say, I watched a TikTok, right? It was this guy who's like, everyone talks about how communism's stupid and doesn't work. And he goes, what they didn't take into account for is that the modern world has found a way to keep us poor and needy, but still let us eat ice cream every day. And it's like, that was the thing that was not possible back when this idea was formed. But now they can keep taking everything from us, but we can have the treats. We can have the, HBO Max account or whatever. We can have an Xbox, even if like we can't get medical treatment. Right. And so I do think there is this reality of the two worlds. What I would say is I think what this movie did particularly is I think because the reality is we live in a very like soon to be Wall-E existence, right? Of us in like our giant chair, just feeding us sody, feeding us fucking sugar, and we just never stop watching, commenting, reaction videos, fucking podcasting, whatever, right? We live in this kind of like content machine where we think we have a voice, but there's so many of us, none of us fucking matter or say anything really. And that's kind of dark to say on your own podcast, but it's true. We live in this world. And what happens is the math behind this is that they know that someone, if he had just made a movie called, Homeless Dust or whatever, right?
Sure.
Less people will click on that. Less people will cover it. Less people will talk about it than street trash. because of that recognizability and an infinite ocean of thumbnails of low budget shit, right?
And
So,
I tip the
I get
hat
it.
in the same way that I would to, like uh, a circus ringleader
Yeah.
who knows how to work the crowd and get everyone to throw in a nickel for some, monkey sewn onto a fish.
Yeah.
It's that I appreciate that, and
Yeah.
I acknowledge that that is a unique skill and
Mhm.
one that I feel like sometimes we ourselves ask ourselves, like, man, we really that is not something we shine as bright in, this idea of hucksterism to like rile the crowd up and do that. And this dude did that well by choosing that and
He
going
is
this route, I think.
incredible. Like
So
as a champion of these movies, for sure. And again, to your point, I would take a little umbrage. Again, I agree with because we are just remaking shit for gluttonous viewership, right? That we are less brave sometimes and we're not as punk rock, right? And this movie adds the aesthetic of it has something to say but doesn't want to say anything, right? Or lends itself to like often saying things that are not great that I don't think it wants to. What I will say is what I think Kruger did in this one is that he was really paying homage to the spirit of punk rock filmmaking more than the punk rock film. I see that like running around with, less trying to reach above the movie it could have been. I think the spirit of the constant like blood or Technicolor spray everywhere, the bulbous engorging bodies, the throwback RoboCop truck kill, right? The dick getting chopped. He's throwing it back to those kind of movies that it feels like we've lost. Is everything is streamlined and pitched deck to death? Is we're starting, like a lot of people are starting like, I can just write a script with AI, whatever. It feels like he's going back to that, going as fast as he can while the bolts are rattling and everything's about to fall off style of filmmaking, right? Is it punk rock like the New York Dolls? No. Is it punk rock like maybe, I don't know, No Effects, some of these later, like now it's cool and they can cash in actually? Maybe. I do think there's still some of that spirit in there in the filmmaking. More that the final product it does not deliver on its premise of the rich are trying to destroy us. How do we grapple with that? We got to take it back. The movie definitely ends with everyone in this town, the mayor's going to be a martyr in this town. Like it's one of those like more interesting 5 minute, like the next hour of that movie would be more interesting than what we watched. Because the citizens are going to say the mayor and all these rich people were murdered at a banquet by a roving band of homeless people with machine guns and axes. The homeless people are going to be in a worse spot than they are in this movie. We see an internment camp. We see that a lady's arguing with him in line and they just shoot her. They can execute these people whenever they want, and now they have a media story that will let them execute these homeless people as freely as they want. The homeless people, truly, the mayor was right, are in a worse spot than they are in this movie. And that sucks. Like, that feels like something that is not the euphoric ending that I was watching.
I just wish that we could have maybe gotten into any of that. Because, you talk about the madness. There's like a madness and insanity to this film, right? Like these characters, the plot, the frenetic pace. And it's like, in that madness, in that insanity, you hope to find some sort of stroke of something, like a little bit of genius, a Jackson Pollock, in the Technicolor goo that's flying everywhere, the Salvador Dali, something, some stroke of genius in that. And what you really get is that guy on the corner who on his box is yelling about class consciousness for maybe 10 minutes and then spends the rest of the fucking afternoon throwing human shit at the Qdoba windows as people eating their fucking food, man. Like, it's really not.
Is that guy not freer than most of us, John?
Freer, sure, but is it the genius that we were looking for in this? No.
Okay.
Man.
Again, I don't think anyone's turning on Street Trash for genius. I think about movies like this sometimes.
Street Trash took the stance that it was going to deliver a point of something higher, that it was proclaiming itself to be slightly more elevated by
I think if you take out the melt the rich genocide of homeless thing, I'll give you that. They definitely used it as a set dressing that is not paid off. Here's the thing, though. I think back to me at 16 in the video store. I see this awesome poster. I rent this movie. Me and my friends smoke some fucking like ditch weed. And we're watching it in the garage. I would have loved this movie. I still like this movie. There's something that is a throwback. And again, I know we all shit on nostalgia. That's fine.
I don't think
the only
we all
reason we shit on it and that it happens all the time is because it is real.
No, I think that most of us don't shit on nostalgia. I think the most people.
You don't think we shit
suckle
on
the
nostalgia?
warm poppy milk that flows from the teat of the
You think we're high on nostalgia?
IP, yeah, a little bit. I feel like had we not taken that stance at the beginning of the movie, that there was going to be some sort of greater issue that was woven into the madness and the stylized sets and everything else, then yeah, it's a romp and it'd be fun and I'd be like, hell yeah. Like this is
essentially a stoner
it's not my cup
comedy.
of tea, but I totally understand it. But when you do that and you take a stance and you're doing that, you are painting a target on yourself for some criticisms, especially when you choose to not honor any of the stuff that you were setting up as being serious or worth an actual conversation. Like, you know what I mean? It's like
yes, this is the danger of trying to appeal to a new thing in horror is that new horror movies all feel like they have some kind of social axe to grind, right? Not a bad, that makes it sound condescending. But you know what I mean? They have some social thing they're trying to attack. Horror always is at its best when it's attacking kind of the dominant positions of the society, right? I think this is just when your IP and that thing don't match. You can't have like a heroic turn from a guy who was about to be a rapist to me, it feels like, right? Like you can't have none of those homeless guys. Like, I don't care at all if any of them make it through or get through, right? Like, actually, one of the weirdest things in the movie is that the lead actor and the mayor, I was like, is that just the same guy with a shave? Like, they're almost indistinguishable. I didn't know anyone's name other than Two-Bit. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like I was watching I was just watching like a fun, like, you know, and then they're hanging around and they're talking about how they're gonna, you know, get ripped and, you know, whatever. They're making the plan, and then I was like, oh, that's fucking fun. And then I'm watching the plan unfurl. Oh, they're licking toes. Okay, this is cool. I think for me, I have gotten really good as a horror fan of just saying, this is that's cool movie. And again, maybe that's not what this one is selling itself as. But to me, having seen Street Trash, having seen Fried Berry, I knew this was going to be that's cool. I didn't expect it to deliver.
No, but it does come preloaded with a stance that feels like it's trying to be, what is it? What's his name? Neil Blomkamp? Like,
yeah, there is kind of like a real low rent District 9 structure.
Right. Yeah. Or like Chappie or like any of his films that do that. They do walk that line and they do have something that they're trying to say and build on. And this one was, I don't know. I feel like it was trading the moments where it could have done that for some jokes that felt pretty stale. If two vegans have a disagreement, is it still called beef?
I mean, come on, that's not bad.
Moments like that.
Yeah, I mean, the comedy is not like uproarious, but it reminded me of like the dipshits I hang out with. The difference is that we're not homeless people that have serious, you know, that's the biggest thing with the homelessness is one, the fact once you show me essentially an internment camp where they just shoot unruly homeless people, it's like, why do they need the gas? Like, it feels like they just have carte blanche to kill homeless people. Absolutely. Or they're creating a system where that many people are homeless, period, will take care of a lot of the problem, right? A lot of homeless people just fucking die of exposure.
Why do we need the subterfuge of it being these drones that are going to like...
Well, because see, I thought that's a good point, because I actually thought what the movie was going to do was that they were going to release hot drugs onto the street so that when people died, they could say, oh, see, they died because they're drug addicts. And you're like, okay, that feels more like the first one. It's a blaming the homeless. This one, you're like, a news media outlet, unless it's like all government propaganda, finds that drone. They're like, oh, they're doing it. Like, the homeless people don't have a drone army. Like, so there are some rough and ready patches. But I think back to when that lady told her backstory, and there was just a real, like, this is it. No one in that movie feels like they've actually dealt with being homeless at all. There's no, like, the scars of having to live this life. And in that moment, that's the one moment in the movie where they show us that. And you're just like, oh my God, this scene is great. She's fucking killing it. This is real, like, human stuff. And then we go back inside and the guy's like, yeah, I was clapping cheeks. Yeah. And you're like, all right, that was nice while it lasted. And now we're back to fun.
The whole vibe of it all is we're so free and carefree that we're like the charming musical theater version of what homeless people could be. Like where we live a life untethered by the whatever constraints of society, and we're loving it.
Yeah.
We wouldn't have it any other way.
They are the real Lost Boys of the movie, yeah.
Right.
Are you saying that the lack of work ethic is the real Peter Pan of this movie, the real bad guy?
No, I just think that it's just a kind of wild take to have.
It is. And again, it's at the expense of the horror, right? The horror movie stuff from this premise is the harsh reality of homelessness. And people walking, like the scene where they're running through and the businessmen are just casually tripping them and insulting them. That's the horror of homeless society, right? Is people turning a blind eye to your plights,
to be ignored.
To the monster that is at your door every fucking second of every day. But again, right. I think horror is one of those things that's layered on to movies to help them get made and find a hyper engaged audience. This is not a horror movie. This is a stoner comedy. That's what it wants to be. It just has some body gags that are fucking awesome, by the way. I feel like we are really brushing over how much I love these gags, which I did, right? But it's more of like a frosting on a perhaps undercooked cake.
The frosting, yes, of the Hook Lost Boys dinner.
That's the thing. Frosting is the best part of cake, right? How many little kids' birthday parties do the kids just eat the frosting and leave the fucking cake?
As an 8th grader, I think we would have lapped that icing up and we would have loved it.
Yeah.
But as you get older, you realize that we have...
It's one of those, you're like, oh, this frosting's hurting my teeth. I need a base for the frosting because I'm old.
What's
I have
a
40-year-old
digestive tract. This is going to fuck my macros for my diet.
Yeah, I do feel like if we listen to more podcasts, like, again, I think I am closer to the target demographic of this movie than you are, right? Sure. I appreciate you watching it with me and doing this, but
I will go on record as saying, not my cup of tea, and I was a little bit, reticent to come on and criticize it too much, because at the end of the day, this guy did something spectacular. He got out there and he made a movie. Yeah. And I'm hoping that they had a blast making it. And the people,
you can tell they had a lot of fun making it, which is hugely important to me watching.
That's really cool. And I don't want to like shit on any part of people's enjoyment of that or say that it doesn't have any merit. But when we're in the realm of talking about it and critiquing it for what it is, it has some flaws that I think are pretty big.
For sure. And I think that's the rough and ready spirit that I'm sure if we talked to Kruger again, he'd say, yeah, fuck yeah, dude. I'm here to make movies and get them out in the world. And sometimes when you're going fast and you're working with less, there are some things that are underserved at times, right? But I think what this movie does is it over-indexes the things that we come for in the trailer, right? And I think that the younger horror audience is going to get an experience that feels unique to them. And then they'll go back and find street trash. And to me, that waterfall cascade effect is a lovely thing, man. And I think Kruger's one of those guys. Like, I think he's going to have a big career because he embodies that spirit that a lot of those directors had back then, which is instead of waiting for the muse and everything to fall into place, it's like, dude, you got to just make movies. Most movies are massively flawed and have things you don't like. If you keep taking bites at the apple and you keep giving us really memorable moments, right? That's the Robert McKee thing in story, right? Most audiences don't remember motivation, backstory, the interwoven fabrics of. They remember like 3 or 4 big moments from the movie. And I think this one delivers on that perfectly fine, right? This isn't going to be like a mind-blowing gem, but I think it's a really fun, gooey ride. And it felt like those movies that I don't feel like we get a lot of anymore. So I appreciated it on that merit myself.
Yeah, and I do hope that he continues to have opportunities to make films and sort of refine that. My biggest criticism is really just framing it as this social commentary, setting it up
I
to
think using
have
homelessness as a prop
that. Right.
is a fucking tough, like that's why you don't see a lot of movies about homeless people, man. It's a tough fucking road to hoe, dude. I remember I was working at a company and I was a producer's assistant and a reader, and I got this novel. She's like, I heard it's great. And I was like, all right. And it's this dueling tale of like an up and coming doctor, surgeon, whatever, in his life mixed with the life of this homeless guy, right? And the chapters on the homeless man are devastating, like really sinking deep into the headspace of the horror of being homeless. Just that people won't make eye contact with you, right? The way they walk around you and ignore you, like just really harrowing stuff. Well, come to find out the doctor was kind of forced by his rich friends to give a girl an abortion. It comes out and it ruins his career. The doctor is the homeless man we've been following the whole book. And at the end, he dies alone on the street and freezes to death. And the producer's like, well, what do you think? And I was like, to be the fucking saddest 2 hours in a movie theater of all time. I was like, I don't know who's the audience that is vastly served by. The audience that would need to see this won't be able to pay to get in the fucking theater, right? The humanizing that thing. And it's just like everyone who read it was like, yeah, this is crushing. And again, that's what homelessness is really like. These people aren't homeless. They're just party animals.
Yeah, it's homeless and loving it is the general vibe. Like,
yeah. It's like Uncle Eddie from Christmas Vacation, right? He's just there for a good time, right?
And here's the thing: is if you wanted to go that route and you wanted to do that, like, okay, cool, but let's just not frame it as though we're trying to have something poignant to say about it.
Yeah,
and that's kind of what it felt like.
The pointed nature of the attack forces us as an audience to grapple with some things, right? Whereas the first one, it was just random booze. The randomness of it made it feel more fun and free.
Sure. And that's fine. And that's cool. And there's nothing wrong with movies that are just a fun, gooey ride, like you said.
Yes.
I think it's just when it's an attempt to try to frame things in a way, you just have to, I think, be cognizant of how you're tackling that material when you are putting it and lensing it in a way that, like, hey, there's something to take away from this. There's a point that's, and especially a point that right now in today's climate feels like really, really hot, really pertinent. Something that we're all, I think, becoming a lot more conscious of and a lot more receptive to. Because when it first started, I was like, okay, we're gonna have something to say about this? And no, we don't.
I think maybe there's a part of me that as politics have gone of how they've gone, I just am like, yeah, maybe we're never going to fix anything. I just want to shut it down and fucking get pink goo exploded on me. And watching the mayor get fucking blown up is cathartic enough for me. I loved when he stomped on his face at the end. It was still talking to him. And he fucking stomped the face. I was like, yeah.
And that shit's fine. That's cool.
Yeah, it was fun. All right, John, we have to end here. What was the most messed up moment of the movie to you?
The most messed up moment. Give me a second to think about it. You go first.
All right. If I had to say, this is tough. There's a lot of messed up moments. If I had to pick one messed up moment, I think the one in this movie that kind of transcends is the toe-sucking gimp, right? It's one of those where it's like, it feels staged, right? But it felt like we were finally diving into this surreal element of the story. There's an element where we see a guy in a lab coat doing his own calculations, like the homeless are starting to experiment on themselves. There was something there where I thought we were about to enter this kind of mutant homeless society. But just the idea that there is this woman who kind of runs the streets, but really what it is, she just wants a dude in a diaper to suck on her toes. That felt like the most messed up moment of the movie to me. That was just that kind of good old-fashioned 80s horror movie fun, where you just show me some wild shit and never explain any of it, that just festers and extrapolates in my mind and becomes bigger moment than it is in the movie.
Fair enough. I think my most messed up moment is the raping.
Yeah, it's hard to... All right, yeah. Sorry, I'm not even going to try to joke. Yeah, unlike this movie, I'm not going to try to make a joke out of it. Yeah, that is a wild ass thing that just got inserted into the film. That's a wild ass thing.
Another messed up movie in the books.
Nice segue, dude. That was pro. Let's get out of the morass. Yeah. I don't know, man. It was a fun movie. Yeah. I am excited for the next offering, the next Ryan Kruger thing, as it were. I just want more shit like this sometimes. This is a movie I'm looking for more regularly. Just maybe take out the political shit. I don't need any more political shit in my life. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I think that, he really has a style that he's leaning into, and it is this sort of like very borderline on insanity level, like energy and momentum and disparate subplots that are kind of pieced in, and gimmicks like Awfully, the guy who is a character that exists purely, as a camera, but not necessarily as our POV through the entire film, just in certain moments. And the whole thing with Sockle, the little blue gremlin, and all this other shit. It's just like there's a lot there that I feel like is churning around in this guy's head, and I think that I hope he has more opportunities to sort of refine that and figure out just the right amount of that insanity. I mean, to just ride that edge.
Yeah, roiling creativity is what I would describe his style as, and that I always want more of. He definitely is not a play it safe kind of guy, and that I respect and want more of all the time.
Sure.
That's it for Street Trash. We hope you guys have enjoyed it. We'll see you Wednesday and Friday for another episode this week. Again, Messed Up Movies Podcast, Patreon, the best way to support the show. Please do that. Subscribe to the Misfit Parade YouTube to see other stuff we're doing. The short film John and I wrote, Sugar Tits, is up there. We'd love for you to watch that. Make sure you're leaving 5-star ratings and reviews. Make sure you're following us on all the socials, sharing all of that stuff. More than anything, thanks for watching movies with us.